Hello, I am Brian Carmray, and welcome to an overview of my game, Altar of War. Altar of War is a 2 to 4 player, unit card driven, and dice action point system game where players compete to try to control regions which each contain an altar. The premise of the game is these ancient altars have just recently awakened, which are fueled by thunderstorms, basically the lightning striking down and creating transformations on any warriors that are on your altar. Each player has one altar already in their kingdom, and they're competing with their neighbors in a Seven Wonders style system where you're basically trying to compete for the highest potential strength in that sector that's formed between your region and your neighbor's region. The dice each season, which is over a variable number of rounds, to collect tokens and then apply those tokens onto their warriors. Each unit itself has 2 unique attack abilities, as well as using the altar system. You can put in your unit and through the course of 3 steps transform it to its ascended form, which is found on the back of the card. That covers the basics to Altar of War. Essentially, players are going to be trying to raid uncontested regions, perform knockouts of enemy units, and also control their regions through superior strength to control the altars and be the first to that set number of victory points. Alright, with that I think we're ready for more of a gameplay overview to drill down into the details. As I was noting before, the way to victory in Altar of War is the first to 13 points in a 2-player game, 12 in a 3-player game, and 11 in a 4-player game. And the 3 ways to get points are raiding uncontested regions, if there's basically no opponent's units there, knocking out an opponent, basically defeating them, one of their units. The core mechanic is controlling the altars. Each season there's going to be a variable number of rounds. At the second phase is the altar phase, which is if you control that sector, you get 1 victory point. Then also on this card are the main symbols that you're going to find throughout the game, which is damage, exhaustion, health, a magic potion, and splash. Those are just some miscellaneous symbols. To get started, players are going to pick one of the 4 core factions in the game. There's humans, elves, dwarves, and orcs. So if I were to play humans, my first thing to do is grab this card here. Backside here shows how to set up. Each faction is made up of 3 sub-factions. You're going to pick 2, and then once you pick the 2, for quick play here, here's the setups for those 2. So if I pick grassland, industrial here, those are going to be my 6 units. There's 2 copies of each in the deck. Lane 2 back, I'm going to have a paladin, and lane 3 front, I'm going to have a valor bard. So basically, you just pick those 2, you put those 2 units where on the board it tells you, and then you can put the other faction back to the box, and then you can shuffle your 10 remaining cards. So it's a very small deck. I would find the valor bard here. It's got these 2 attacks, and I would put them here on my lane 3 front. So they would go right here. Setup. Setup's very quick and easy. There's not too much to do at once, but over time you get a lot of small actions, and it's essentially building up the ultimate attack engine is the goal of the game. Starting with the first phase, the first 2 are very quick. The Seer Phase is first player only, a card off the center of the table, and essentially they're going to look at it secretly and pick either the top or the bottom. It's going to have variable number of rounds in a season. So this is the first player choosing how long that season's going to be, and they either choose the 2 or the 4. And whichever side they choose, they're going to put it face down in front of them, and then the other players are going to know, based on the side they chose, either it's going to be 2 to 4 rounds, or 1 to 3 if they chose a lower number. So in this case, if it was a 2, they would know it's between 1 and 3 rounds. Whenever each player is first player, they get to have an impact over the total length of the game. If they want to slow it down, if they want time to recover perhaps, or if they're looking for some fast scoring of controlling the altars, if they're in a good spot, they might want a quick season. So now going on to the altar phase here, I'm going to just slide down the main board here. So how the main board works is in the center there's the altar cards, which we went over this year. Basically for the first player, they're going to draw these altar cards, and then there's the scoring track, for the stars in the middle. And then you can see in a 2-player game you need like 13 points here. So kind of see that visually. And then so essentially this is going to be the tracking token to know where it is in the season. Essentially, the first thing you do is the Seer, and that's just a quick little choice of the cards, and then you're in the Alter Phase. So the Alter Phase, each player gets 1 Alter of War action, plus 1 for each controlled sector. For each of those controlled sectors, you get 1 victory point. So if you control both your sectors, you're getting a lot, because you're not only getting Alter of War actions, but you're also getting victory points. All players are going to roll their dice here, and then finally everyone's going to draw back up to 3. You'll note that you also draw back up to 3 at the end of every turn, basically, whether it's a day phase or an alter phase. So we're going to touch on how it works. So essentially that's the alter phase, and then you're going to have the first round of the season, and then based on like whatever the first player chose here, so in this case it would have been a 2, so that would have been kept secret. So then it's going to go, first player's going to go first, and then it's going to go around the table clockwise, and then once it goes around, then this is increased to 2, and then it goes around again. And then once it's done going around the second time, first player is going to reveal this. Okay, it was a 2, so the Rolling Thunder here, reveal after 2 rounds the season ends. So then it's going to go to the next player to the right, so you can follow the arrow here, to their board, and it's going to start over for them for the next season. So that's kind of the structure. So each round here, the core phase is the day phase, which is again the number of rounds picked by the Seer secretly. So the first one, you can either roll your dice or keep them. So even when dice are drafted from, they stay available on the same sides that they were. Players, when it's not your turn, you can easily be thinking ahead as to, oh, what symbols if I'm going to want to draft next turn, what symbols am I going to take? Kind of plan it out ahead of time, and it's a good balance of strategy and tactics, with choosing your dice as the strategy, then reacting to the other players with how you want to spend your tokens as the tactical play. So after keeping or rolling your dice, you then do either draft or you activate. When you draft up to 3, or you can draft a magic potion and then 1 that's available. So in this example here, if the white player rolled these dice, black player rolled these, and red had these rolled, and then your players are going to be drafting from them. So you draft between yours and your 2 neighbors. So even in a 4-player game, every player is only going to have 6 available dice to them. So 3 and 4 both play like this, and then in a 2-player game, each player is going to have 3 dice. So it still forms at 6. Activating a unit, you're going to want to, you can move it spending tokens, and then you can choose which attack, if you have the tokens available to you, which attack you're going to do. Make sure you're lined up for it, and then you're going to just put the token on it and be able to do the attack. And then once you attack, the exhaustion system is fairly straightforward, in that after attack you have 2 exhaustion. Next it goes around, and then let's say you attack with a different unit. That unit would then get the 2. So if the Dragonkin here, it would get the 2, and then the Valor Bard would be, flipped from 2 to 1. And then once you have a 3rd unit attack, Dragonkin would go down to 1, and the Valor Bard would be available again. Either if you draft or activate a unit, as long as you have a token, you can discard it to deploy any one unit to either of your 2 regions, and then again draw back up to 3 cards. That's it. That's a season. Red cubes are just to track wounds. There are some healing abilities, but wounds persist throughout the game. So we're going to go to attack and defense because I have the symbols right here. So essentially there's the shield, which acts like additional health. It reduces damage taken by 1. They're good basically to deter opponents from attacking your units, because you can either place it directly on the unit or you can keep it in your hand, which each player has a hand limit of 6 tokens, but that's discarded after you reduce the damage. The rest of the tokens here, the other 5, are broken down to 3 different attack types. So there's this dagger and the sword, which is for melee attacks. It's just the frontmost unit against their frontmost. The flank attack, which is diagonal. And the range, which allows you to attack over one of your units, but not over one of the enemy units. So you still have to attack the frontmost, but you can basically attack from the back row. And then some units in the game are flyers, which also have a knack at getting to the back line. So no matter what attacks they have available to them, they can always choose to attack the back line. And a key thing to note here is all attacks in the game, regardless of what's listed, when you assign tokens to a unit, which we'll go over next here, you can actually assign multiple tokens of that attack type, and you gain 1 extra damage for each extra token assigned. So example here is like the Valor Bard. If I put on 1 sword, I'll be able to do the Honor Bearer attack for 1 damage. And perhaps my text will apply here, which in case it does, it always applies after attack. I remove all exhaustion from allies, and this unit gains another sword. So automatically it has some built-in kind of engine building in that it gets stronger over time. So then after placing this, my strength, if this was my only unit in the region, would now be 2 in the region. Even though you get exhausted after attacking, you still project strength in the region. So for controlling the altar, you want to have the most strength in that region. Honor Bearer, first one is 1 to be able to do the ability, and then I could apply multiple, even at the same turn. If I drafted multiple swords, I can then do 2. So that's basically the core mechanic of the game. You're going to drafting tokens and then resource management in terms of deploying a unit cost a token, moving a unit cost a token, and then attacking. The tokens actually stay on there. So that's kind of, you kind of get your engine going. And with exhaustion, you're going to usually want to have at least 3 units, ideally, to ultimately have on the board and just cycle through them so that you no longer have to collect tokens. So like I was saying before, each unit has 2 different attack options. This one's the Honor Bearer at the top here, and War Hymn, which uses a different symbol, the dagger there. And then on the back, if you ascend a unit in your altar, you're going to have 2 different attacks on the back, which are basically just stronger versions of the same attack. The unit usually gets more health and then more damage on its abilities. So you get to choose your strategy in terms of, do I want to play this unit now? Which ones do I want to send on my altar? And which ones do I want to invest in to reap rewards later? So that's the attack system there. And you're going to see that my first and second lane match up with their 3 and 4. And this is, you're attacking on this front over here. It's going to attack frontmost to frontmost, but if there's no unit in your way, you can attack freely to their frontmost. So even if they have something in the back of 3, and you have something in the back of 2, here you're going to be able to attack. So for instance, even with the dagger attack of precise strike here on the bottom, that's going to be able to attack whatever is frontmost in this lane here. So this kind of forms a lane. And then, so the dagger and the sword's attacks are the frontmost to frontmost, we touched on before. The arrow, even if you have a unit in front, you could still attack over your unit to attack their frontmost. So that's what the arrow in the sun is for. And then the unique one on its own is the wheel. So if you have a unit like Tail last year on the Dragonkin, it actually attacks diagonally. So the frontmost in your opponent's 4th lane here, so front 4 if there's a unit there. If not, you could attack the back. But also note, since the Dragonkin is a flyer, and they can actually ignore the frontmost with all their attacks and attack the back. Players are going to be placing their units, powering up their units, and you're really not just powering it up for that attack, you're investing it into the future, hoping that it's not defeated, so they can go around and you can maintain that strength, again, to control the altar that you're fighting over here, to get additional Altar of War actions and more points on the game to get to be the first to the set amount of victory points. So hopefully that covers Altar of War. I can answer any questions you have. Thank you for your time.